Today we're going to be looking at the NXT90, a heavyweight reversible seat four-wheel swivel wheel stroller from Emmaljunga. The NXT series, and the NXT90 in particular, really formed the first successful move by Emmaljunga to modernize their line away from their four-wheel fixed-wheel roots. Emmaljunga, you see, is a very old company, the oldest stroller manufacturer in Europe actually, originally founded in 1925. And while they have made a few moves away from their classic fixed-wheel designs before, like the Nitro, the Monkey, or the Viking line, none have really hit as hard as the NXT series. Let's start with a few stats. The NXT90 clocks in at 16 kilos, which is heavy, even for a heavyweight. It folds down to 76 by 40 by 30 centimeters, takes 15 kilos in the seat, and 5 kilos in the underslung shopping basket. I would say that in addition to the comforts for regular use that you already expect from a stroller of this configuration, namely the maneuverability of swiveling front wheels and the quality of the seat and carry cot that accompany a stroller of this price class, your experience with the NXT90 will likely be dominated by three prominent qualities: its terrain capability, its weight, and its durability. This is a heavy-duty stroller, designed in Sweden, first and foremost for the rugged Scandinavian terrain. It's made to get over stuff and to take some punishment, and the extra weight both helps it to do this and is a result of the use of sturdier than average materials at various key points across the chassis. This means that the NXT90 will generally be a bit heavier to use than a lot of other strollers. It will be heavier to pack in and out of a car or carry up the stairs. The sturdier engineering also plays into the design of the mechanics, which feel a little larger than average and take a bit more finger force to activate, in particular the folding mechanism. Maintenance-wise, you're looking at spraying down the mechanisms occasionally with a WD-40 type spray, as this works better against rust than silicone spray, which is better for strollers that implement more plastic into their engineering. The NXT90 has air-filled wheels, which, while it's great for adding suspension, means you will occasionally have to deal with pumping and punctures. A last note I'd like to make on maintenance is that though the seat portion of the fabrics is easy to zip off, the canopy unfortunately is not removable from its frame, thus requiring hand washing if it gets dirty. Okay, let's have a look at the mechanics then, top to bottom. Okay, a few mechanical notes on the seat unit then. The footboard is adjustable. It's adjustable via these mechanisms here on the side. In the past, we have sometimes seen problems with these mechanisms when you sit a child in that's a little bit heavier and they kick or put too much weight here. The mechanism can separate from each other or wear down in relation to the teeth on the discs on the inside. All of the mechanisms, however, on the NXT90 are a little bit more heavy duty than you would find on strollers with similar mechanisms, including some older models from Emmaljunga. So we haven't actually seen any problems with this yet, but it is a potential area of problems in the future. In addition, the mechanism for adjusting the position of the seat is this very large bar that extends out the back. It does actually take a certain amount of pressure to activate it, and it's pulling at the mechanisms inside the center here. I also see that as a potential problem area that I actually haven't seen problems with yet, simply because anytime you have so much pressure and such large activation pieces for a smaller mechanism, you do tend to see wearing down. One area where we have actually already seen problems has to do with the canopy. As I said, the canopy fabrics are not actually removable, they're riveted into place. This is a design that Emmaljunga has had for a very long time, and one of the key problems with using rivets in this way is that when the central rivet starts to loosen, the canopy does not always stay all the way upright. I have seen problems with this after even just 2-3 years, that rivet isn't tight enough. If you have that sort of problem, eventually what you wind up needing to do is to drill out the rivet and replace it. Okay, moving on to the handle and the telescopic mechanism. The Emmaljunga NXT90 is actually quite heavy duty, even though it uses a lot of similar sorts of mechanisms as you'd see on other strollers. It does have sort of a more heavy duty quality version of them. So the handle position mechanism here, that is something that has again had problems in the past on Emmaljunga, but it's very thick on the NXT90 and it has a protective additional plate on the back side. I've not seen any sorts of problems with that. The telescopic mechanism, of course, gives a little bit more adjustability to the height of the handle. What's nice about it is that it uses the clip design, as Boogaboo has a tendency to use, as opposed to a design that would necessitate internal wires that can break. There are sometimes problems with this sort of clip design where the pegs on the inside of the clip wear down as you're using the stroller, but it's one of those parts which is actually quite easy to switch out when it does eventually have problems. And again, as with everything else on the stroller, it's a bit more heavy duty than you might see on similar sorts of mechanisms on other strollers. Okay, moving on to the central locking mechanism. The overall design of the NXT series in general allows for a very simple central locking mechanism. A lot of strollers are doing their central locking mechanisms this way now, where a telescopic mechanism allows the handle to slide down into the front frame, so that all you need to do with the central locking mechanism is allow the rear frame to lock in place at a distance away from the front frame. Thus, the central locking mechanism actually functions quite simple. There is a bar within the central bar that slides into holes in the back frame and locks it in place. I do wish that the activation or means of activation for this mechanism were a little bit simpler, since it does involve two hands and both a trigger here and a button here. I feel that that's a little bit more than they needed to do in order to activate that mechanism, but still, it's a relatively sturdy mechanism. One note though, as that inner bar locks into place on the rear frame, it goes into a hole. It's a very sturdy sort of a setup, but there is a little bit of space for some looseness with that rear frame, and you'll find that it's like that more or less right from when you purchase it. So it's nothing to really be worried about. It doesn't indicate that something is breaking, and actually it gives the stroller a little bit added suspension or feeling of suspension as you go up over terrain. Okay, having a closer look then at the lower rear frame of the stroller, I would point out that there is quite good suspension in the rear frame as it connects down to the lower bar. Overall, this stroller has really, really good suspension and a really, really good driving ability. The brake system is a redesign of an older sort of a design that they had on the Emmaljunga City Cross and the Nitro and a few other models. And I wasn't a big fan of this brake design even back then. Problem being that there is like internal pipes or bars that run through this lower square bar here into the wheels, and there's quite a lot of spring tension in them. And what can happen sometimes is that when those start to rust, the spring tension won't release them properly into the wheels, and instead puts a lot of pressure on the central pedal and can start wearing it down. Now, I haven't actually seen this problem with the NXT90 or really any other NXT strollers yet, but that problem occurred with the City Cross after a number of years, and the NXT simply hasn't been around long enough for that to maybe occur. That could be a potential problem area in the future. It is redesigned though, so there is a good chance that problem won't wind up occurring. We can at least hope. Okay, we'll have a look at the front frame as well then. There is again a little bit of suspension built in. The wheels are of a slightly larger size than some other models of a similar class. It's more or less standard though. I do find that the wheel setup as it attaches to the front frame is quite nice. It doesn't have inbuilt wobble protection. What I mean by that is that sometimes the axle can start to wear down the housing on the inside and wobble when it goes too fast. But I've actually found that this is one of those few strollers you can, if you need to run for a bus or something, you're not going to find the stroller driving in a strange way. And I think that has a lot to do with the overall shape of the stroller that's kind of low and has a wide footprint. And this definitely impacts the way the front end works as well. I'm not a huge fan of the swivel lock system. It's an older design that Emmaljunga had on a few other strollers, and what I found before is that either this little plastic peg wears down, or very often the groove in which it attaches can sometimes wear down as well. But it is what it is. It's not the worst design, it's not the best design. Overall, I feel that the suspension again on the stroller, both front and back end, coupled with the air-filled tires and the good wheels, makes for a really, really solid driving experience, especially when you think about the overall durability of the materials and mechanisms used on the stroller. So that impacts the performance of both the front and the rear end. I would make one little note on wheels, and that is that they do have a variety of tire options, and my recommendation is to go for this kind of middle of the road tire. They have a slim option and they have a studded option. The problem with the studded option is that sometimes you are going to want to drive your strollers in malls and on very flat terrain, and then it feels actually a little bit bumpy because of those studs. And the problem with the slim option is that it's simply going to reduce that performance slightly that you're going to get off-road. So that middle option, which is kind of the smooth tires, but not the super slim variant, is going to be your best bet. So is the Emmaljunga NXT90 right for you? I would say that the NXT90 is going to fit best for people with one of two different sets of life conditions. Firstly, if you live in the country or traverse relatively bumpy terrain daily and need a stroller that can handle that terrain without wearing down, then the NXT90 is a good fit. At the moment, the NXT90 is my top pick for terrain capability on a four-wheel swivel wheel model. Secondly, if you plan to use your stroller daily without a car for several hours a day and need something that can withstand some punishment both from the terrain and from the weight you load it up with, yet still hold up for several years at this pace, then the NXT90 would also be a good pick for you, especially if you live somewhere where it snows. When would the NXT90 not be a good choice for you? I would say that if you live in an urban or smooth suburban environment, use a car regularly and don't have a large car, if you live in an apartment that's not on the ground floor and don't have an elevator, or for some other reasons will have to take your stroller up and down stairs regularly, then there are better choices out there for you. In any case, we hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, we ask that you subscribe as it helps us to continue making videos in the future. Thank you.